for you, my
Hey guys, you're listening to Metal Matters, a weekly gimme radio podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hill. If you like metal, punk, hardcore, or anything extreme, you've come to the right place. So subscribe and never miss out. I feel like it's inevitable that you and I were going to do one of these, Mike. We do the Necromaniacs podcast, which is a horror-based podcast, and I met you first when you had Brooklyn Monster Factory.
In Park Slope.
The excellent comic book, t-shirt, movies, like all the cool stuff.
That's how we met each other back in 2006.
And then we realized we had a couple things in common. Mm-hmm. One of the things we had in common was our love for hardcore and punk and extreme music. And the other thing we had in common was that we played in bands.
Correct.
And
yes.
I knew of Inhuman.
Mm-hmm.
And it was mentioned to me that you were Mike from Inhuman, and this was your comic book store.
Yeah, it was me and my brother John. We were co-owners of the Brooklyn Monster Factory. It was a great little run, man. We had the store for 4 years, and we got kind of kicked in the ass by the recession back then. But it was a great time. We made friends, aside from you, friends that we still have today, and it was just really cool. Great way to meet people on top of, selling comics and reading comics.
Oh, yeah.
Hanging out. And, man. And now I have another band called The Last Stand, which I do with the guys from Shutdown, which is my brother Mark's band. A lot of music in the Scondotto family, so sometimes it's a little hard to keep up. But, I'm really happy to be here, man. I love your podcast, and thank you for having me.
Nah, it's my pleasure, man. And also, Comic Day, new Comic Day at Brooklyn Monster Factory became like an all-night thing. I remember.
I know. You would come down, and Lou from Sick of It All would come in, and people would just hang out there until the store closed, or much later than the store closed.
Yeah.
It was really cool. We'd watch movies and watch horror on DVDs, and it was a lot of fun, man. I miss those days.
Another great memory too is I remember I came in like on a Saturday one time, and that's kind of a dead sort of day, I guess, and that Cannibal Corpse DVD set.
Yeah, the documentary. Yes,
and we watched pretty much the whole thing. Yeah, I was like my Saturday afternoon was hanging out at the shop.
Still one of the best music documentaries ever. For Death Metal Band.
Since then I owned it.
Me too. I own it too. It's great. It's a great one, man.
It's only fitting that tonight's episode is dedicated to a Brooklyn original, Typo Negative. Mm-hmm. And, I'm a carpetbagger out here in Brooklyn. I'm not from Brooklyn originally. I'm from the suburbs. And Mike was born and raised in Brooklyn.
Yes.
And had an opportunity to witness basically the formation of this band. Mm-hmm. The transformation from Carnivore into Typo Negative. And, that's why I invited Mike on, to give a sort of street level insight into Typo Negative and what we both consider to be a groundbreaking record for them, their debut record, Slow, Deep, and Hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mike. It's cool. It's just, they're one of those bands that I think, especially as a Brooklyn, kid coming up, that really just kind of raise the bar and set the standard. People think of, they think of like Typo Negative and maybe Biohazard, Life of Agony, and then maybe a little later on you'll go Marauder and a band like Indecision. But Typo Negative is the Brooklyn band. They got biggest, international gold record, platinum record. I mean, they just kind of are the band that pretty much everybody looks up to. And, a lot of bands kind of maybe not aspire to sound like them, but aspire to their greatness,
Yeah, they were a major band in the 90s.
Absolutely,
right
yeah.
up there, with like Pantera. And,
Yeah.
Like at a time when metal was kind of dead, really, if you think about it. Metal in like a commercially
In the
viable
commercial
way.
sense, right? Exactly.
Grunge was happening.
Death metal was happening.
Death metal was happening. But like as far as like commercial success, metal was on the fringes.
Yeah.
And really, in my opinion, I feel like Typo Negative and Pantera kind of kept it alive, really.
Definitely. I mean, taking grindcore death metal out of the picture, as far as the bigger level, yeah, they were definitely. I think the two bands that really kind of carried that torch and just did so well at that time, and it was a weird time. People like to say, "Oh no, there was this happening, that happening," and there was, but when you look at the bigger picture, metal was in an odd place for a good chunk of the 90s.
Yeah, I even feel like the more extreme end of metal too isn't as big as it is now.
Yes.
You know
See,
what I mean?
The perception is that it was, but it not at all. I mean, you and I go to the shows in New York over the last 10, 15 years, and honestly, I think there's double to triple the amount of people at a death metal show now than there was in the very early 90s. So
yeah, because back in those days, you'd have to load the bill up with like there'd be these package bills with like Morbid Angel, Obituary,
right,
Incantation,
right,
Immolation.
and now it's weird because sure enough, that's kind of back yet again. So it's that scene has come full circle.
Yeah.
But then you had a band like Typo Negative who didn't fit almost anywhere, right? I mean,
they had their own thing. Completely.
They were their own animal. I mean, you have like a thrash crossover, doom, industrial, gothic monster, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially the first record, which is what we're going to be talking about, Slow, Deep, and Hard.
And there's also that patented dark sense of humor that the band had too.
Exactly.
And that's what I think really set them apart from a scene that is pretty serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
totally. No humor. Pretty humorless, serious. Scene in general.
In the early 90s in England, you had like the big three. You had My Dying Bride, Anathema, and Paradise Lost. And there was no humor in any of those bands whatsoever, And then Brooklyn, we had Typo Negative. So, yeah.
Give a quick rundown. So the release date of Slow, Deep, and Hard, according to the intel that I have, is June 16th, 1961.
91.
Release date, June 16th, 1991. And this is a Road Racer release.
Right.
Though it is part of the overarching Road Runner record label.
Yeah, they started using the Road Runner name, I believe, in 92, early 93. So, yeah, this was Road Racer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember the great ad for this record with the, big picture of Pete and like little pictures of the other, the rest of the band on the side, and very cool advertisements for this record at the time in the metal mags.
Program length 58 minutes 31 seconds, a relatively long record
for
that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Recorded at System 2, Brooklyn, New York. 1989. Engineered by Michael Marciano. Mastered by Michael Sarsfield. Interesting
thing about Systems 2, we're recording this in South Brooklyn, and Systems 2 was moments from where I lived growing up and kind of where I live now. Back then it was on Avenue U and Nostrand Avenue. And then years later it moved over to Ditmas Avenue in South Brooklyn. And then unfortunately in 2018, the studio closed for good. They did a lot of records there, actually. Yeah. All sorts of music too. But Pete loved it there, and the band loved it there. They did a lot of their, stuff there, if not their entire catalog at Systems 2.
Yeah, it's a hard business these days, man. It's recording,
And it was, old school, traditional studio, exactly. Yeah. And, it's funny growing up, like, it never dawned on me just how close it was until I was a little older, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's so great."
So the guys that played on the record, we had Pete Steele on vocals and bass, Kenny Hickey, guitars, backing vocals, Josh Silver, keyboards, backing vocals, and the original drummer, Sal Abruscato, on drums.
Yes.
Obviously. Mm-hmm. And credited on this record is the Bensonhurst Lesbian Choir.
Yes, the Bensonhurst Lesbian Choir. That's the humor, man.
Which is basically the guys in the band.
It's the band,
yeah. The basic track listing is the Blood side is unsuccessfully coping with the natural beauty of infidelity. Very long song title. Der Untermensch, Zero Tolerance with an X. The Fire side is Prelude to Agony, Glass Walls of Limbo, The Misinterpretation of Silence and Its Disastrous Consequences,
which is a minute of silence.
Gravitational Constant. The thing that really grabs me about this record is, first of all, the songwriting is incredible.
Oh yeah,
right. There is a very heavy dose of dark humor on this record that borders on absurd.
Yes,
I think at times,
absolutely.
Yet, the intricacy in which this entire concept record was crafted is pretty unbelievable.
It really is. I mean, it was written by a guy in his, mid-late 20s, completely composed musically and lyrically by Pete. And, he was coming at the end of Carnivore. He basically, around the beginning of 1989, Carnivore plays its last show for a little bit. And it's an infamous show in February 24th, 1989 at Lemoore called Negative Night. And it was Carnivore headlining with Sheer Terror right under them. Biohazard, who were fairly new at the time. They'd come out in around 88. This is the beginning of 89. And a band called Toxemia, who was the opening band. They were another South Brooklyn, thrash crossover band. But there's a lot of synergy on this bill because with Toxemia, it's Sal, who went on to be in Typo Negative. He's the drummer of that band. And he was a drum student of Louis Abito, the drummer of Carnivore. So that's interesting factoid. And then Biohazard is on second. Pete Steele actually gave Biohazard their name and was tight with those guys. And Evan, the singer-bassist of Biohazard, was like a Carnivore roadie back then. Another, Brooklyn, incestuous kind of thing going on. And then, of course, you have Sheer Terror, who are just probably the most negative of all the CBGBs, late 80s bands. Not a lot of those bands played Lemoore, but Sheer Terror managed to play Lemoore with a lot of frequency back then. And they had a great New York City fan base and a great Brooklyn fan base. And then, of course, Carnivore. It had this very fitting name, Negative Night. I was 15 at the time. Negative Night was supposed to be one of the first times I was supposed to go to Lemoore. I was already going to CB's, mind you, okay? Going to the Lower East Side in the late 80s. I was unable to go to that show. I think I was in trouble or something, and I could not go. My first show at that club, Lemoore, wound up being about 3 months later. It was a Biohazard show. And I remember I was so pissed. I remember that that Monday I was talking to my friend Joel about it, and he was like, "Oh man, this was one of the most violent things I've ever seen in my life." It was a crazy, crazy night. But yeah, right after that, Carnivore is kind of done, and Pete, picks up with Sal, picks up with his old bandmate Josh Silver. Josh, the keyboard player of Typo, was in Fallout with Pete in the early 80s when they were really young.
Yeah, Fallout, that demo.
The 7-inch Rock Hard. Yep.
We both have that Rock Hard demo or 7-inch.
Yeah.
And it's basically like a post-punk band.
It's very odd. Yeah, it's really different. I mean, even then you could again, the songwriting and the style, it's just such an odd little moment of music. And that band, they just put out that one EP and then they kind of, broke up, and then Pete forms Carnivore right after that.
Diametrically opposite
Yeah,
sound-wise, you know?
He's always in motion. That's the cool thing about Pete Steele back then. I mean, he's always doing something, you know, musically. He's kept starting new bands. You know, with Kenny Hickey on guitar, and that kind of completes this new band, which back then was actually the very first name they had was called New Minority. And I remember this because back then the drummer Sal had a recording studio, actually rehearsal studio, on Quinton Road and 34th Street called Counterpoint. And my band back in high school used to rehearse at that studio, and that's how I met Sal. And I'll never forget this. He says, "Hey, you like Carnivore?" I says, "Yeah." He goes, I'm doing a new band with that singer, Pete." I was like, "Oh, wow, that's really cool. You want to hear some of it?"
Oh, no way.
And I remember, and he played me like a jam, like a, you know, like a rough kind of jam of what was the Repulsion, you know, demo, kind of, you know, before it was really recorded. And I was like, "Wow, this is really different. This is really cool."
Was it a lot of the same songs that ended up being on
I mean,
Hard?
this is a long time ago. This is the beginning of let's see. Well, this is like in the late summer of '89, beginning of '90. I mean, I might have heard just some really dirgy, like you know, moments of it, and I just didn't know what to make. I was like, "Wow, this doesn't really sound like Carnivore."
It might even have been like pre-production.
Right?
For that
Exactly,
record,
exactly. And one day I got to the studio a little early before the guys in the band I was in were there, and they were rehearsing. New Minority was rehearsing, and I just remember watching them and like seeing Pete Steele. I was just like super intimidated.
Yeah, dude's like he was like this big, muscular,
yeah,
tall.
and like kind of all four of them. I was kind of intimidated by all of them. I'm
Yeah.
like 15. I maybe just turned 16. I was just like, wow, and it was so loud and so heavy, and I was like, holy shit, like this band is going to be awesome, you know. And they eventually settle on the name Repulsion instead of a New Minority. They changed the name. And that March of 1990, March 23rd, they play their first show.
Repulsion.
As Repulsion. And it was an interesting bill. It was American Eagle opened. It was like they were like a South Brooklyn oi hardcore band. The Icemen, one of the CB's bands, was on. Yeah, they were awesome.
Yeah.
They were the second band. Everybody, me and my friends were all fans of theirs. And Repulsion, 3-band bill. And it was wild. I have to say, like they did a good chunk of the demo, and they did Jesus, Hitler, and Race War and Predator. And yeah, it was great.
You keep mentioning, that was a CB's band, and for some people out there might not be familiar.
CBGB's band,
yeah,
yes.
but they might not really be familiar with the difference between, say, a Lamore's band and a CB's band, or the difference between Brooklyn and Manhattan.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I had the luxury of having friends that were a little older that took me to my first matinee. I was like 14, and we were all South Brooklyn kids. We all were from Sheepshead Bay, actually, and we would travel to CB's every Sunday. And you had your CB's bands. You had Sick of It All, Rest in Pieces, Bold, Youth Today, Sheer Terror, The Icemen, Super Touch, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, look at the compilations of The Way It Is and, like Revelation Records, like those kind of bands. That was like the CB's scene. Brooklyn had its own thing going on. It was a little rougher around the edges, let's just say, especially by around 88, 89. Brooklyn had Biohazard. It had Carnivore, who went on the Type O Negative. A little bit later, you have Life of Agony. You have
which shares a member, Sal.
Yes, who Sal went on to quit Type O Negative after Bloody Kisses because Pete didn't want to tour that much, and he joins Life of Agony permanently. It's just it was a different kind of vibe, and other Brooklyn bands, a band called Mr. Pickle, they were kind of like a Murphy's Law kind of band. Social Disorder. It was a little different kind of vibe, and I had a band when I was a kid back then with John from Candiria. We were called Close Call. Just a little different thing going on. Stylistically, like I said, I think it was probably just a little more rougher, maybe a little more dirtier, you know.
Yeah.
But like I said, I mentioned Sheer Terror before. They were traveled in both kind of circles.
And
you
the
know?
Cro-Mags too. Also
Exactly. Cro-Mags played Lemoore a lot. You know, certain other bands of that era never really played the club, so it was kind of weird. But I grew up going to both. I mean, it was just such a great time back then. You know, going to Lemoore on a Friday or Saturday, and then going to CB's on Sunday. It was great. You know.
And also Lemoore was getting like the international bands that played there,
Right.
like Metallica, obviously.
Yeah, they were before, but I got to see Slayer in 1990 at Lemoore. I mean, that was unreal. You know, Suicidal played there for Lights Camera, Bad Brains, Quickness Tour. I mean, I saw like marquee bands. And back then, Repulsion, they got on a lot of, good shows up until, it's funny, Lemoore ends up closing in May of 91. And Pete Steele announces from the stage, "We're Typo Negative now." You know, it's the name of the week because they had gotten wind of the death metal Repulsion that already had an album out. And, I guess not everybody knew about everybody back then. You know what I'm saying?
Well, information was
exactly.
very slow.
Would a South Brooklyn band with a demo know all about a death metal band from the Midwest? Maybe not. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so they had to change the name. For a very hot minute, they had the name Sub-Zero, unbeknownst to them about the hardcore band Sub-Zero, and they had to change that. And then they settled on Typo Negative, which, let's face it, was a smart choice.
Yeah, none of those names, I think, would have had like the mass appeal. Like,
Typo
you
Negative.
think about what Typo ended up doing, like playing like Wacken and Wacken Open Air Festival and doing all this great, huge things. Like somehow I don't feel like Repulsion or New Minority would really flew.
The name was the name. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but the funny thing is, like, they'd always like joke that we all had these damn negative symbols on us since like 1990. It's like we had to have a name that fit these symbol. The negative symbol. So it was just kind of fortuitous.
The sound of the record too. I mean, I obviously didn't come to Typo Negative as early as you did. It took me maybe 96. Like when October Rust came out, that's like when my first introduction into the band. And I remember at the time I was living in Boston, and one of my roommates was a big Biohazard fan, a big Typo Negative fan, and he came across with the October Rust record, and I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool," Then he played me this one, and I was like, "This is definitely more."
If you hear October Rust first, and then later on you hear the first record, it's like, holy shit! Like, it's really like night and day.
And then I went backwards because I hadn't heard of Carnivore really.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Okay.
And then I discovered Carnivore, and they're like, "Oh, if you like that, you should check out the band the earlier band Carnivore." And I was like, "Yeah." This is like all like 96.
So what did you think of Carnivore?
It was awesome because like I was way into Celtic Frost and and I picked up right away on like the Celtic Frost sort of
Venom.
Like I mean that was my when I was like in high school,
right?
Listening to like WXCI Metal Shop, like Celtic Frost, Venom, that kind of thing was like very much within the vocabulary of like metal that I had.
Especially the Carnivore first record. To me, I listened to it. I hear Venom so much on it, and Pete was a big Venom fan apparently, so they were an inspiration to the band. And then Pete finds the hardcore scene in between the first Carnival record and Retaliation, and then the reflection on that is there. It's just kind of such a wild story. In an era when the hardcore bands were going metal.
Yes.
Here's a metal band from Brooklyn going hardcore. So strange. Like no one was doing that except for them.
Yeah, they're one of the bands that get tagged with the crossover.
Yeah, no, tag. Absolutely. But another thing that kind of pushed that forward was at the time, Carnivore and Agnostic Front had the same manager. A lot of these bands on like that combat road racer scene, were intertwined in some way. on the label side, the distribution side, business side, and it had turned out that AF needed a drummer, Agnostic Front, and enlisted Louis from Carnivore, and they needed some help on their record, which was going to be their second record, Cause for Alarm. And Pete Steele was a fan of Agnostic Front and ended up writing some of the lyrics on that record. And it's funny because, he's uncredited on that record.
Right.
And it's just, people, I remember hearing about this years later because I was too young in 84, 85, 86. And I was always like, wow, he did? Like, I always thought that was such a crazy fact, But then it kind of made sense as I heard Retaliation. Retaliation came out in 87. I heard it around 89, I believe. So I was like, okay, this all kind of makes sense. And then you take the lyrics on some of Slow, Deep, and Hard, and then it really all makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And there was a big thing in Decibel with the Cause for Alarm.
Yeah, yes, the making of.
I found that so fascinating.
Yeah, it really was. It was a great article.
How Cause for Alarm, I mean, it could have been a Carnivore album.
It really could have.
You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
Yeah. Crazy, right?
And that's coincidentally one of my favorite AF records.
Yep. It's my second favorite. My first favorite is Victim in Pain.
Yeah.
That is my number 2, 100%. So.
Yeah, Victim in Pain, just because of how raw and at the time I never
and
heard
like
anything
every
like
song
that.
is just like, wow. It's the birth to me. It's like the real birth of New York hardcore, like that record. But Pete, was a young guy, his early 20s, and he found that scene and he liked that scene a lot. And it's funny because Retaliation is very, it's not like hardcore. It has like hardcore moments, but it's just the vibe is there, and I think lyrically there's no more of the fantasy Road Warrior kind of thing on the first Carnival record. The Retaliation is more reality and like, depression and anxiety
personal
and
issues.
anger, and definitely some of that carries into Slow, Deep, and Hard.
And also on Retaliation, there's like these like kind of breakdown parts in the songs too.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yes,
are
yes.
That was when I think of Retaliation, I think of like the kind of slow breakdown parts on those records.
We called them mosh parts, back in the day.
So-called mosh part.
Mosh parts, breakdown, dance part, Mike.
That was the first thing.
3 names, yeah.
That was the first thing I was going to say.
Dance parts.
But I wasn't sure how if that was even a word the kids use these days anymore about these things.
I don't know if kids use it, but like people are, me and my friends kind of use it sometimes. But yeah, see, people out there younger, you might have just learned, yes, it was called dance parts sometimes.
Sonically, and this is funny, as a kind of a guitar player, one of the things I noticed on Slow, Deep, and Hard is the extreme use of the chorus and flanger on the guitars in these records, man. And that carried on throughout the Typo career, really.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, I think everybody plays their ass off on this record.
Yeah.
I mean, Kenny, Sal is a great drummer. Like, he's a beast on this, I think Kenny's playing is great. The keyboard moments are really cool and different. It's like sometimes keyboards can overpower things to the point of like annoyance, but Typo, they always have it kind of just right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's a great part of the song, like an addition to the song and music. It's not like this weird backdrop noise. It's like a perfect moment of the song.
Also, we touched on it earlier about how many genres are kind of melded together on this record.
Yeah.
And there's like the heavy use of samples, samples as rhythms.
Yeah, jackhammers and
jackhammers,
saws and girls moaning, and it's really wild. To me, it is so like the beginning of the 90s. Like this tape, it came out, well, can backtrack a little bit. For those who may not know, I would say a lot of Typo fans do know, Slow, Deep, and Hard, the album, is the Repulsion cassette demo, None More Negative, with an extra track on it, which is The Glass Walls of Limbo, and basically just kind of remastered, maybe a slight remix, but it's the demo that they had for sale at their first show, which I still have to this day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But it's funny. Basically, they got almost 30 grand from the label for a recording that they already made. Isn't that unreal? Isn't that awesome?
That's the 90s, man.
Yes,
when
but
there was money to throw around like that.
Getting back to what I was saying about the 90s, it's like everything is new in a way, you know, like in these heavy genres of music, like industrial metal is this new genre, you know, and like gothic metal is new, and hardcore isn't really new anymore, but crossover hardcore is new-ish, you know. And to me, it's just like lightning in a bottle, you know, how they just kind of captured all of that in one recording and on one record.
Yeah, and also the use of clean vocals too, mixed in there with like the screaming vocals,
Yelling,
and more extreme vocals, and you know, like in the song as a prelude to Agony, there's like that cool like synth intro which goes on for a while, and then it just goes into this like evil like guitar, and in 1991. You really weren't getting too much of stuff like that. That was like a groundbreaking kind of like, you know, combination of elements, really.
I've said this before, you know, to friends of mine and mutual fans of the band. I've still yet to hear a record like this record. I've heard records like Bloody Kisses maybe and October Rust, and I've heard bands that do that kind of gothic metal thing, like more European bands, and Moonspell kind of went from being kind of like more of a black metal band to kind of sounding a little more like the later Typo Negative. But when it comes to this first record, I've never heard another band sound like this first record.
Yeah, when I think of gothic metal, I definitely think of Europe, the European bands. And this is like an American version of it, but then also add in the Brooklyn factor.
Yes, the dirty city street factor. And no one's done that ever again, right? I mean, I guess any band who tried to would be instantly compared to Typo Negative, but you would think someone would have made something a little more along these lines, but not really, unless it's out there, and I've never heard it, but I've always thought that that's what's made this record so great, is that it kind of stands alone.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, some of the, what are some of your favorite tracks on the record?
Honestly,
I mean, it's hard.
I love the fact that I can go into certain bars in Brooklyn, and on the jukebox, if Unsuccessfully Coping comes on, half the bar screams, "I know you're fucking someone else." That is, to me, is just great and awesome. And as a Brooklyn native, I get a special pride out of hearing that. That's one of my favorite. And, you know, Gravity, Unjustifiable Existence, that's another favorite. For a hot minute when I was in high school, I had a band with Rich O'Brien from Darkside called Existence, and I got the name from this.
From that song.
You know, I always thought that was a great song.
It runs deep out here, you know.
Yeah, I mean, come on, exactly.
Sure.
So I like every moment of it. And when it came out, and I'd heard that Glass Walls of Limbo, I was like, oh, they've had this live before. Like that was something they would play sometimes before they got on stage at a lot of shows. So it was kind of funny that they tacked it onto the album. I thought that was actually really cool. That's a track that is not on the demo. So, yeah.
One of my favorite, well, Prelude to Agony is probably one of my two favorite songs on this record. I mean, the whole record's great. And honestly, I kind of feel like you should listen to this as one piece.
Yes, absolutely.
Because of the story. Like, in it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
there's like a story.
Especially at the very end. Yes, I agree. I would agree with that.
You know? And it's like a concept album. You know what I mean? It is, right? Wouldn't you say?
In a way it is. I mean, what's really funny is at some point in my life, I met the guy who was fucking, I guess, the girl that Pete Steele was really upset about in the I Know You're Fucking Someone Else. The guy that the girl met at L'Amour Saturday night, as they say in the song. Yes, I met this guy.
Really?
I refuse to say who he is.
That's all right. But maybe you can tell me off air here, you know. I probably don't know who he is.
And then I had 2 or 3 other people confirm. Yep, yeah, that's him. Yeah.
But that's what I mean. It's like
Years later,
a drama. Like this
it
whole
is a
thing,
drama, yeah.
it really is. It's like, and the whole album is basically inspired by this event that happened to Pete Steele in his life. It's like a real life event.
Yes, I would say so. The only like sidestep would be the Der Untermesh, because that is kind of not a part of the angry kind of revenge story. It could be just kind of part of just the storyteller's anger at the world, right?
Yeah, that's how I read it. I read it
exactly.
Like,
okay, yeah,
because it's like you think about some of our favorite characters, like Travis Bickle or whatever. There's a lot of like ancillary things that happen in the story that aren't directly results of the horrible thing that happened, but they're still part of the story. And I kind of feel like that, that outburst of anger and frustration is just sort of a byproduct of the infidelity. You know what I mean? And
I think you're 100% right. And it is interesting years later, almost 30 years later, to think of this record as a story. It kind of puts it in a very different light, because the band got in a lot of trouble when they went to Europe with this record. Maybe not so much in America, but the lyrics really got put under the microscope when they hit Europe in late '91. And Pete also got a lot of flack for the carnivore lyrics and the AF lyrics. And like in the press, he had to do a lot of like explaining and this and that, and they got some flack for it. He was called racist, misogynist, and this and that. And hey, I guess I could see it, if you don't like know who he is. And to me, I guess, I don't know, I live in the tunnel of being from Brooklyn, right, and being a South Brooklyn person, and being there for their first show and seeing the band 20 something times, between their beginning and end, you know what I'm saying? And I don't like see it that way, but I could see how other people would see it that way, especially people not familiar with sarcasm, with, New York City 80s kind of 90s vibes. You know what I'm saying? It's just very different for other people.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lack of context, I think, is what I mean. I remember reading the same things about Pete Steele and Typo Negative, and the backlash, and and the European thing, especially in Germany.
Yeah, they got a lot of shit.
They're very sensitive about things like that, and but once again, it's like, this is like almost like a recurring theme in this day and age about context and sarcasm, basically using sarcasm, using irony in a true way, not in like not in a surface way in which irony was being used. And I think that, appreciating the band in that sense, it's like you can kind of like understand, like, okay, well, this is like, and I think because the record is like almost like cinematic, really. I mean, not to sound, I know it sounds corny to say it's cinematic, but it is, because it tells a story. And if you watch a movie, it's not like, say you watch Taxi Driver, right? And you, that doesn't make, Martin Scorsese a sociopath, you know what I mean? Or racist, even though a lot of his films have topics like that in there. They deal with racism and like, it
was of its time.
It was of its time,
And the thing is, though, although Pete had to do a lot of clarifying, he did also say back then that, you know what, I am a working class guy, and I have always worked hard, and my parents did instill in me certain values. And he said things like, I am not a punk rocker. I am not anti-government. I am not anti-police. Like, he'd be like, this is how I feel about certain things too. He goes, you have to kind of respect my opinion on certain things, No,
well, that's 100% true. And that's also one of the things, especially today, where it's like, it's good. It's kind of cool we're talking about this record, because so much of this is magnified. Today's day and age, where, the kind of woke culture
right
has, it's like, my perception of that is like it's a bunch of people who deny religion, but they take on a new religion called being woke, or being political.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like the same things that a religious extremism sort of superimpose on everyone. It's like, well, okay, you have to follow this like very strict guidelines, otherwise you're an infidel or something.
Yeah, they had a very hard time. Their tour in Europe was with Pungent Stench in December of '91. It barely lasted. They were home pretty fast. It's like we're being called fascists.
Oh, man.
And we're getting fascist tactics thrown against us. It's just very strange how it is mirroring certain things of today, you know?
Well, that's been going on in Europe for ages, really.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even before the climate in this country sort of became like that. There's, it's funny. I've been over to Europe many times over the years, over the last decades, and there's been, not specifically with my band, but with bands that we've toured with, there's been like issues with Antifa, like
right,
and then the leaning on a promoter, and like it was in Nuremberg, and this promoter was leaned on because the guy in one of the bands that we were touring with, in a press photo, had a Burzum t-shirt on.
Oh man, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Over a t-shirt.
So yeah. I mean, it's like that. It's always been like that. I feel like in like the punk rock world or whatever, and the real irony thing, and I've said this before in a lot of different platforms, is that you're fighting fascism with fascism.
Yeah,
really,
and that's not good.
Yeah,
what does that do?
I mean, if anything, it creates a backlash, really.
Exactly. And it's funny, they had a real crazy time with this record after it had come out. Pete didn't want to tour. He wasn't really into touring. And they went on a tour in November of '91. It was Biohazard, Typo, and The Exploited. It was supposed to be 30 dates. It lasted about a week and a half because there was like, they were this, long-haired, doomy band going on in front of crazy, exploited punk rock fans. Yeah. Like, they were getting things thrown at them. And then on top of it, Waddy kept canceling shows left and right. There'd be a show, there'd be no show. There'd be a show, there'd be no show. And I think it lasted almost maybe 2 weeks. And the whole thing was shut down, and they went home.
Wow.
And then they went to Europe like soon after that, and then that was another shit show. So yeah, this record was not easy. But then apparently after all of this, the record started doing well in Europe and America. After all of this, I would say due to all this controversy, because there was a lot of press back then.
Yeah,
no internet, but a lot of zines and radio and metal magazines, especially metal magazines in Europe and in America. So it's interesting. Like the band almost like imploded, but all this negativity, this good things came out of it for them. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, another track is Zero Tolerance, which I really like.
Yeah,
it's got that great lyric. I called your house, but you couldn't be reached. I took the D train
to Brighton Beach. That was when, back then, it was the D and not the B as it is now.
That's what I was going to mention.
Exactly. It was the D and Q.
Yep.
Now it is the B and Q that goes in South Brooklyn.
It makes like a nice, like a kind of like a cool like time capsule.
Oh, it does. And then on the Origin of the Feces, which they put out in '92, he gives another little D train, shout. And I believe in Hey Joe. So yeah,
there's a lot of references to South Brooklyn.
Hey Peter,
Yes. There's a lot of references to South Brooklyn throughout the lyrics of all. I mean, there's My Girlfriend's Girlfriend. I talk about King's Highway, which is right close. Runs through South Brooklyn, and yeah, I mean it's it's funny when the band was around and when Pete was alive. You kind of take it for granted. You know what I mean? In some ways.
Yeah. What's funny about that is the last tour, I missed the New York date. And I remember I never missed their New York dates, but I missed the New York date of the last tour because I was like, oh man, whatever. Well, I'll just see them next time. And there was no next time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't say I completely took them for granted because I was at so many shows, but in the end, you know, it was just so weird how like that would have been my last chance to see them. So my real last chance that I saw them was somewhere in the Life Is Killing Me touring cycle, or maybe if they had done 2 tours on Dead Again. I'm not remembering right now, but the final record, Dead Again, I actually absolutely loved. It's amazing last record, but to me that one has the hints of the first record.
Yeah,
because of the heaviness and the fast parts.
Well, they always they always nod towards like the hardcore. Mm-hmm. There's always a couple of songs
or moments, or at least moments, right?
Moments and songs where there's like this kind of like there'll be like a hardcore beat or like a fast guitar, fast part. And I always appreciated that there'd be these slow epic songs, and then they would bust into like this kind of faster hardcore part with like ironic humor. You know what I mean? And it kind of, it's like when you take any Type O Negative record for the first time, you don't really know what the hell you're going to get sometimes.
Right.
You know that the first track is going to be kind of like maybe a little bit of a
joke
right?
Track. Or
like a noise,
yes.
Some kind of like nod,
skipping
like
or
wink,
noise. Yes, exactly.
But from that point on, you don't know if it's going to be like, irony, like slow, heavy, dirgy kind of stuff, like epic kind of thing, fast, hardcore influenced. And sometimes they played it straight too on some songs too. And those are the ones I love those ones too. Like Anesthesia, I think it's like they play. It's a pretty straight song, really.
Yeah. Oh, it's a beautiful song.
It's a beautiful
song.
That's like
the best. That's my favorite song on Life Is Killing Me.
Yeah.
Which is actually my least favorite album from them. Life Is Killing Me. That's one of their best songs. But this record is interesting because I always feel like not a lot of people say this is their favorite in the scope of things. A lot of people seem to go October Rust, and now lately a lot of love is on World Coming Down.
I like that record.
Is one of my other favorites.
Yeah.
But number one, my immediate is always this album because it's my introduction to the band. I had already was listening to the songs for over a year when the album came out. And I think it's brilliant that they were able to put the demo out as the album. Basically, about 1,000 copies of this green cassette demo were made. And, I guess in the scope of things, I mean, Roadrunner might not have done their homework because how do you get a band, right? You've heard their demo. You've seen them live. You've given them $30,000 to make an album. They hand you a record, and you knew they were going to re-record basically the songs from the demo, but you didn't realize that it was the demo.
Hey man, mastering, that's
yes, unreal.
The performances are the same. I like that. It's like this kind of scam. Like,
they scammed them.
It was cool. For me, I think I did hear October Rust first, you know what I mean? And I remember when that record came out, you saw it everywhere. There was like, back in the day, you'd go to like Tower Records and
the big
like
thorns.
Gigantic,
yes.
Yeah, you'd see that everywhere. The posters.
And that song, Love You to Death, that opening track, that's one of their best songs to me. I think that's an amazing song.
Yeah. But I wasn't as impressed by that, but it was when I went back to this record, that's when it really sunk in and it made me a fan. So that's why, and like I said, this is like a groundbreaking record, number one, and number two, on a personal level, it's what really hooked me into the band was this record.
And I think hearing it at the time I heard it as, a 16-year-old kid, it just really spoke to me as an angry Brooklyn kid back then,
Yeah.
Angry hardcore kid, metal kid, and it just struck such a chord with me, And it's just something throughout my life. It's just one of those records that's just like, wow. It takes me back to that time and place,
Yeah.
And it's more than like nostalgia. To me, it's just something. It's like a life record. I call certain records life records, Mike, and this is a life record for me.
It's
like Danzig 1
oh, man.
to me is a life record.
Yeah.
Rain and Blood is a life record. I consider Dark Thrones Blazing the Northern Sky and Panzerfaust. Those are like two of my life records, you know. But yeah, this record just has always meant a lot to me.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, like I said, it's the thing that always impressed me about it was how, you know, in a good way, how absurd the story is.
Yeah. It's fun. You can laugh at some of this, right?
Yeah.
See, some people get too caught up in some of the negativity, but I mean, come on. People singing "I Know You're Fucking Someone Else" at a random bar is that's hilarious.
You know, and couple that with the level of detail that the songs were. I mean, the way the whole thing was put together with the interludes and like you know, it's like that's what really got me with. I mean, in general, a Typo Negative, but with specifically with this album, how, you know, each song fit into, like I said, into this storyline, you know, and it's an absurd story, but he still fucking sat down and wrote this shit out. Like he still it wasn't like there was nothing throwaway about it. You know what I mean?
No, there is nothing there's no, see certain, look, I'm a big enough fan that I can say there's filler on some records and there's some songs that I don't like at all. To me, on this record, there's nothing that's throwaway, and there's nothing that I skip over. This is like a 50 whatever minute. I listen to the album when I put this album.
Yeah, totally.
I don't
the same way.
listen to the song. I listen to the album, and I'm not bored, you know, and I'm not like looking to find another track. It's just one big story.
Yeah,
you know.
So you got, you know, I don't think we ever found out what any of your favorite tracks were. You said you liked. You know.
Well, Unjustifiable Existence. I mean, I go by the shorter names. Know You're Fucking Someone Else and Unjustifiable Existence are probably my two faves.
Yeah.
Kill You Tonight. You know, Kill You. I mean, I don't know. I
just gotta love it.
It's hard to pick like a one favorite, or it's just the whole damn thing, really. You know. The cool thing with Glass Walls of Limbo, it's like you feel like you're listening to like some kind of like Viking crossed with goth kind of chant thing. Like I always thought that was so cool, you know.
I don't think at the time I heard this, that was new too. A lot of this, like,
yeah, right.
It wasn't really
using
like
that kind of using those sounds and samples. Like it was new, absolutely. Yeah.
And also, like, I prior to listening to the Typo Negative, I was familiar with My Dying Bride, you know, and Paradise Lost.
Right.
And we also said that there was absolutely no humor.
No.
And also, when I first heard this record, I had that context to listen to it by.
Right.
But it was like, oh, there's elements of that, but it's like this darker, grittier, you know, more street element to it and the first time I heard it, I was like, wait, you know, is this really what this guy's saying too? But then I was like, oh yeah, okay, I kind of get it.
I get it.
You know, yeah. So.
Yeah, man. I mean, this is a 5-star record for me. You know, like I said, I think over the years, the years have been pretty kind to this record, and I think it's kind of like a timeless record. I know people who are more into hardcore and don't really like the output past this record, actually.
Oh yeah, because it is more of a.
But then I know people who are a little more kind of, you know, on the metal side that, you know, they like this record. It's not their favorite, but it's just, you know, differences of opinion, really. I just think it just depends on where you were when you heard it, or maybe what age you were, or what order you heard it, you know, would you say?
I would think so, definitely. You know, this was a remaster. This record came out in 2009, too, I think.
Yes. I don't have that. At one point, I wanted to check that out. I mean, I think I've checked that out online. And honestly, I would only say the only major difference might be some volume levels. There's no real difference.
No extra tracks.
No. Yeah. They've never really done that. For, let's see, in 2000, I believe 12 or 13, Roadrunner licensed Slow, Deep, and Hard to Metal Blade for a limited vinyl release. They did some on green vinyl and some on black. Interesting story. I had my black vinyl one, you know, that I'd had for like 5 years or whatever. And last year, Kenny and Johnny Kelly from Typo did an in-store for the 2018 it was actually, a little over a year ago. November 2018, they did an in-store at Generation Records for the triple record store day of Bloody Kisses.
Oh, wow.
So I brought some stuff to get signed, and I made a very silly mistake. I had the Slow, Deep, and Hard in a box, and I put the box down, like a record box, like an LP, like when you buy a record and it comes in a box. Put it down for a moment. It was crowded in store. I turn around, it's gone. My record was stolen by a Typo Negative fan at a Typo Negative in store.
Oh, it's terrible, dude.
I was so pissed. I was so upset because the record goes for almost like $100. The upside is that my buddy at Generation, a few months later, says, "Guess what has come in? Someone sold us a copy of it." He goes, "I don't think it was the person who stole yours, but someone. We have it back." And I got my record back. I didn't get my original record back, but I got my Slow, Deep, and Hard vinyl back. So now I have it on vinyl. And now, of course, it's included in the box set that came out in 2019, which I believe is sold out, but I'm seeing it available in some places. But currently, it is only available on CD and digitally. Like, you can't buy a standalone version of Slow, Deep, and Hard on vinyl. That Metal Blade one was just like this kind of one-time thing.
A limited sort of
Yeah, but I had it, lost it, and I got it back again. So, thank God.
It's funny to think about how many great records are not in print, really. On, vinyl, Like a few months back, we did a Rollins Band Hard Volume episode.
Yes, and most of his early stuff, or almost all of it, I've noticed, is not on vinyl.
No.
Yes, a lot of it.
It's all just out of print, and it's like, it's just. I think it's definitely time where a lot of this stuff come out again, like gets repressed, remastered, or, and it should be available. Like, these are classic records, especially this record.
And it's funny. Right now, it just came out. World Coming Down came out for the first time ever on vinyl.
Yeah.
That's never been on vinyl.
That's the other thing too, is like that band being in the 90s, that was like the CD era, And
early 2003, vinyl was dead.
Yeah.
And that record came out in 2000. 2003 is Life is Killing Me. Life is Killing Me has also never been on vinyl. So that's why when that box set came out last year, it was a big deal because it was the first vinyl appearances of a few Typo records. So that was kind of cool. But I think that hopefully they get them all out individually again on vinyl. That would be great. Hell, I'll buy them.
Yeah,
but
there's definitely
this record, the Metal Blade pressing sounds really good. If anybody has thought about grabbing it on Discogs or whatever, but it's a little pricey, but it actually sounds very good.
Well, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
We should do more of these.
Yes, we should. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you having me on. And I hope people, appreciated the little Brooklyn, tidbits that I was able to provide.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Cheers.
Trust and you'll be trusted, says the liar to the fool. Lost someone of your
That's it for this week's episode of Metal Matters, a Gimme Radio weekly podcast. Tune in next week and see what we have in store for you. The show is available on all streaming platforms, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, etc. Also, be sure to check out Gimme Radio, streaming on the web, iOS, or Android, for one of the best metal communities, exclusive merch, interviews with artists, and so much more. I'll catch you guys next week. Take care.